Breaking overnight, with millions of Americans a day away from losing the critical lifeline of SNAP food benefits amid the government shutdown, President Trump is now calling on Republicans to go nuclear. The president posting online, "It is now time for the Republicans to play their Trump card and go for what is called the nuclear option. Get rid of the filibuster and get rid of it now." The filibuster requires 60 votes to pass funding to reopen the government. Getting rid of it would mean Republicans could pass the bill with a simple majority vote. But it's empty on Capitol Hill this morning, and senators have left town for the weekend ahead of the critical day. Tomorrow marks the first day of open enrollment as well for Obamacare, where health premiums have skyrocketed, a major sticking point for Democrats.
Okay, so I need you to understand just how wild things have gotten on Capitol Hill right now, because we are watching a political crisis unfold that could fundamentally change how the United States government works. President Trump is in an absolute rage at Senate Republicans, demanding they blow up the filibuster and use what's called the nuclear option to ram through his immigration agenda and end the longest government shutdown in American history. We're talking about a president who is so desperate to get his way that he's willing to destroy Senate traditions that have existed for generations, and the backlash from both parties is reaching a boiling point that we haven't seen in years. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
And also tomorrow, 42 million Americans who rely on food stamps will see a lapse in benefits, forcing many to go hungry or skip paying certain bills so that they can buy food for themselves and their families. CNN's Kevin Liptak is joining us now from the White House. Kevin, what is the latest? We have seen these posts from the president making some demands on his Republican colleagues.
Yeah, and they call this the nuclear option for a reason. It's viewed as a last resort, even by members of the majority, and it would have the effect of incinerating precedent in the Senate. And so this is a step that even Republicans have been wary to use in the past, but clearly President Trump has made the determination that now is the time. He said he gave this a lot of thought on that lengthy flight back from Asia, where he says he was asked repeatedly why the U.S. government.
Let me put this in perspective so you understand the stakes here. The government shutdown is now stretched past 40 days. That makes it the longest shutdown in United States history. Longer than any previous standoff between Congress and the White House. Airports are experiencing mounting delays that are affecting millions of travelers. Critical food assistance programs that help struggling families are at risk of running out of money. Federal workers aren't getting paid. National parks are closed or understaffed. And through all of this chaos, Trump is digging in deeper and demanding that Republicans give him exactly what he wants on immigration, or he'll let the whole thing burn. Come on, are you kidding me with this? The President of the United States is holding the entire federal government hostage because he wants to push through his hardline immigration crackdown without having to compromise with anyone. That's not leadership, that's hostage-taking. And even members of his own party are starting to say so publicly. Democratic leaders have been calling it exactly that, hostage-taking, and they're not wrong. Trump is essentially telling the country that he doesn't care how much pain the shutdown causes. He doesn't care about the federal workers missing paychecks. He doesn't care about the families losing food assistance. He's going to get what he wants or everyone suffers. And what does Trump want? He wants Senate Republicans to eliminate the 60-vote threshold for passing legislation. He wants them to use the nuclear option, which would allow bills to pass with just 51 votes instead of the traditional 60 needed to overcome a filibuster. This would be a massive change to how the Senate operates. The filibuster has been a defining feature of the Senate for decades. It forces compromise because neither party can usually pass major legislation without getting at least some support from the other side. But Trump doesn't want compromise. He wants total control. He wants to ram through his immigration agenda with zero Democratic input and zero need for negotiation. And here's the thing, even Republicans are pushing back on this. Senate Majority Leader John Thune and other GOP leaders have so far resisted Trump's demands to go nuclear. They understand that eliminating the filibuster would be a massive shift in power that could come back to haunt Republicans when they're eventually in the minority again. Today's majority is tomorrow's minority, and any rules you change to help yourself now will be used against you later. That's why cooler heads in the Republican Party have been reluctant to blow up the filibuster, even though Trump is screaming at them to do it. But the pressure is intensifying from all directions. On the progressive left, Democrats are furious at their own leadership for what they see as caving to Trump's demands. A recent Senate vote advanced a temporary funding bill that didn't include key Democratic priorities like locking in Affordable Care Act subsidies. Progressives went absolutely ballistic. Some House progressives have even suggested that Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer should step aside because they think he gave away too much without getting anything in return. So you've got Republicans angry at Trump for pushing too hard, Democrats angry at their own leaders for not pushing hard enough, and everyone caught in the middle of a shutdown that's causing real pain for millions of Americans. This is what a government in crisis looks like. This is what happens when a president would rather burn everything down than accept anything less than total victory. And the scary part is that Trump isn't backing off, he's escalating. Just this week he announced he wants to permanently pause migration from what he called third world countries. He's threatening to expel millions of people who were admitted under the Biden administration. He's tying the shutdown directly to his most extreme immigration promises. And he's making clear that he expects Republicans to fall in line or face his wrath. The question now is whether Senate Republicans will hold the line on the filibuster or whether they'll eventually cave to Trump's pressure and fundamentally change how the Senate operates. The question is whether Democrats will continue to resist or whether the pain of the shutdown will force them into even more concessions. And the biggest question of all, how much damage will be done to the country while Washington fights over who's going to blink first? Let's get into what's really happening here. All right, so let's really dig into the dynamics of what's happening on Capitol Hill, because this is more complicated than just Trump versus Democrats. There are multiple factions fighting multiple battles at the same time. And understanding those dynamics is key to understanding why this crisis has dragged on for over 40 days with no end in sight. Let's start with Trump's strategy and what he's actually trying to accomplish here, because his approach is both aggressive and potentially self-destructive in ways that even some of his allies are warning about. Trump came into his second term with a clear agenda on immigration. He wants to dramatically reduce both legal and illegal immigration. He wants to deport millions of people. He wants to use executive power to accomplish things that previous presidents would have sought legislation to achieve. But here's his problem. The Senate still has the filibuster. That means any major legislation needs 60 votes to pass, and Republicans don't have 60 votes. They have a majority, but not a supermajority. So Trump can't just ram through whatever he wants on immigration without Democratic support. And Democrats aren't going to support his most extreme proposals. They're just not. So Trump's solution is to eliminate the obstacle entirely. He wants Republicans to invoke the nuclear option, which is a procedural move that would change Senate rules to allow legislation to pass with a simple majority of 51 votes. This has been done before for judicial nominations. Both parties have used the nuclear option to confirm judges with simple majorities, but it's never been done for regular legislation. That's a line that neither party has been willing to cross because everyone understands the long-term consequences. Think about it this way. If Republicans eliminate the filibuster for legislation now, what happens when Democrats eventually retake the majority? They'll be able to pass whatever they want with 51 votes, too. No Republican input needed, no compromise required. Every piece of progressive legislation that Republicans hate, Medicare for all, Green New Deal, gun control, all of it could pass with 0 Republican votes. That's why Senate institutionalists in both parties have historically protected the filibuster even when it was frustrating for their own agenda. They understood that the short-term gain wasn't worth the long-term risk. But Trump doesn't think in those terms. He wants what he wants right now. And he's putting enormous pressure on Republican senators to give it to him. He's been publicly attacking any Republican who resists. He's been posting on social media demanding that they terminate the filibuster immediately. He's making clear that loyalty to him means supporting his push for the nuclear option, and disloyalty will be punished. This is classic Trump, using bullying and intimidation to try to get his way, regardless of the institutional damage it might cause. So far, key Republican leaders have held firm. John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, has been resistant to eliminating the filibuster. Other senior Republicans have expressed similar concerns about the long-term implications. They're not opposing Trump on immigration policy itself. They support most of what he wants to do on the border. But they're not willing to blow up Senate rules to get there, at least not yet. The pressure campaign is ongoing, and Trump shows no signs of letting up. Now let's talk about what's happening on the Democratic side, because it's equally chaotic in its own way. Democrats are in a difficult position. They don't have the votes to stop the shutdown on their own terms. They can't force Trump to sign a bill he doesn't want to sign. And the longer the shutdown drags on, the more pressure builds on them to cut a deal that gives Trump at least some of what he wants. But progressive Democrats are furious about any concessions. They see this as caving to hostage-taking. They argue that giving Trump anything rewards his destructive tactics and encourages him to do it again. This tension exploded recently when the Senate voted 60-40 to advance a temporary funding bill. That bill didn't include key Democratic priorities, most notably the locking in of Affordable Care Act subsidies that Democrats had been demanding. Progressives saw this as a betrayal. They felt that Senate leadership was giving away their leverage without getting anything meaningful in return. Some House progressives went so far as to suggest that Chuck Schumer should resign as Senate Minority Leader. They said he had failed to stand firm against Trump's bullying and had taught Trump that hostage-taking works. This internal Democratic fight is significant because it shows how much strain the shutdown is putting on the party's coalition. Moderate Democrats want to end the shutdown and minimize the damage to federal workers and programs. Progressive Democrats want to fight Trump at all costs and refuse to reward his tactics. Schumer is trying to thread an impossible needle, finding a path forward that doesn't completely alienate either faction. So far, he hasn't succeeded. The party is divided. The base is angry. And Trump is watching all of this and calculating that if he just holds out long enough, Democrats will eventually crack and give him even more. And here's where the immigration dimension makes everything even more explosive. Trump isn't just demanding a clean funding bill to end the shutdown. He's tying the shutdown to his most extreme immigration demands. Just this week, he announced that he wants to permanently pause all migration from what he called third world countries. He's threatening to reverse admission decisions made under the Biden administration and expel millions of people who are already in the country legally. He's using the shooting of National Guard members at the border as justification for even more aggressive enforcement actions. This is crisis politics at its most dangerous. Trump is taking every bad thing that happens, the shutdown pain, the border shooting, economic anxiety, and using it to demand more power for himself. He's creating a narrative where the only solution to every problem is giving him what he wants. Don't like the shutdown? Give me the filibuster. Worried about border security? Let me pause all migration. Concerned about crime? Let me deport millions of people. It's a constant escalation where every crisis becomes an excuse for more extreme action. And some senators, even some Republicans, are getting genuinely alarmed by this pattern. They're watching a president use emergency rhetoric to justify unprecedented power grabs. They're seeing him attack the courts when judges rule against him. They're watching him threaten to arrest Democratic lawmakers for opposing his agenda. And now they're being pressured to eliminate one of the Senate's most important checks on majority power. The picture that's emerging is of a president who doesn't accept limits on what he can do and who's willing to blow up institutional norms to get what he wants. The next few days and weeks are going to be critical. The shutdown can't go on forever. Something has to give. Either Trump backs down from some of his demands, or Democrats cave further, or Republicans agree to go nuclear on the filibuster. None of these outcomes are good. They all represent either a defeat for one side or permanent damage to how the Senate functions. And meanwhile, real people are suffering. Federal workers are going without pay. Food assistance is running out. National parks are falling apart. Airport security is strained to the breaking point, all because Washington can't get its act together. All right, so let's break this down into what really matters and what you need to understand about where this is heading and why it should concern everyone regardless of which party you support. Point number one, the push to eliminate the filibuster is about much more than just this shutdown or immigration policy. It's about fundamentally changing how American government works. The filibuster exists to force compromise. It means that major legislation requires broad support, not just narrow partisan majorities. Eliminating it would turn the Senate into a pure majority rules institution where whoever has 51 votes can do whatever they want. Now, you might think that sounds fine if your party is in the majority, but remember, now majorities change. Democrats held the Senate not that long ago. They'll hold it again eventually. And whatever rules exist when they do will determine what they can accomplish. If Republicans eliminate the filibuster now, Democrats will use that new reality to pass their agenda when they retake power. And then Republicans will be the ones screaming about majority tyranny and demanding that someone restore the old rules. This is why intelligent people in both parties have historically protected the filibuster even when it frustrated them. They understood that short-term victories aren't worth long-term institutional destruction. Trump doesn't care about any of that. He wants what he wants right now. He'll be out of office eventually and term limited, and whatever damage is done to Senate rules won't be his problem anymore. He's perfectly willing to blow up norms that took generations to establish if it helps him get a political win today. And that short-term thinking is exactly what makes his pressure campaign so dangerous. He's not trying to build anything lasting. He's trying to grab as much power as possible while he has the chance. Point number 2, the Democratic Civil War over shutdown strategy reveals real divisions about how to deal with Trump's hostage-taking approach. Progressives argue that you should never negotiate with hostage takers because it just encourages more hostage taking. If Trump learns that shutting down the government gets him concessions, he'll do it again and again. The only way to stop the pattern is to refuse to give him anything, no matter how much pain the shutdown causes. Let him own the damage. Let voters see who's responsible. Don't reward bad behavior. Moderates argue that this is unrealistic and cruel to the people being hurt by the shutdown. Federal workers need their paychecks. Families need food assistance. You can't just let people suffer to make a political point about negotiating tactics. Sometimes you have to cut the best deal you can and live to fight another day. Politics is about the possible, not the ideal. And if refusing to negotiate means more suffering for innocent people, that's not a principled stand. That's abandoning the people you're supposed to represent. Both sides have valid points, and neither side is completely right. The reality is that there's no good option when you're dealing with a president who's willing to cause unlimited pain to get what he wants. You either give in and encourage more hostage-taking, or you hold firm and watch people suffer while hoping voters eventually hold Trump accountable. It's a terrible choice. And the fact that we're in this position at all is an indictment of how broken our political system has become. Point number 3, Trump's immigration demands keep escalating in ways that should alarm everyone. We've gone from building a wall to family separations, to remain in Mexico, to invoking wartime deportation powers, to permanently pausing all migration from poor countries. Each step is more extreme than the last. Each crisis becomes an excuse for more aggressive action. And there's no indication that Trump has any limiting principle about how far he's willing to go. The National Guard shooting gave Trump an opportunity to escalate even further. He's using it to justify freezing all asylum decisions. He's threatening to expel millions of people. He's framing any opposition to his policies as support for violence against American soldiers. This is how authoritarian-style politics works. You take every bad event, every crime, or every tragedy, and you use it to demand more power and fewer constraints. You create an atmosphere of permanent crisis where normal rules don't apply, and anyone who questions you is portrayed as soft on threats to the nation. Point number 4, the people suffering most from this shutdown are ordinary Americans who have nothing to do with these political fights. We're past 40 days now. Federal workers have missed multiple paychecks. Some are taking out loans just to pay their mortgages and buy groceries. Food assistance programs are running out of funding, meaning millions of vulnerable families may lose access to nutrition support. Airport security is strained, meaning longer lines and potential safety concerns for travelers. National parks are deteriorating without maintenance. Scientific research is being delayed or abandoned. Government services that people depend on are simply not available. And here's the thing, none of these people did anything wrong. They're not responsible for Trump's immigration demands or Democratic resistance or the filibuster debate. They're just trying to live their lives and do their jobs. And they're being used as pawns in a political game where the people making decisions don't feel any of the pain they're causing. Trump still gets his salary. Members of Congress still get paid. The political class is insulated from the consequences of their own failure to govern. It's regular people who pay the price. So where does this leave us as we watch this crisis continue to unfold? We're in genuinely dangerous territory. The longest shutdown in history shows no signs of ending soon. The president is demanding that Republicans destroy Senate norms to give him what he wants. Democrats are fighting among themselves about how much to resist. Immigration policy is being made through crisis rhetoric rather than deliberation. And millions of Americans are suffering while Washington plays political games. The outcome of this fight will shape American politics for years to come. If Trump gets the filibuster eliminated, it changes everything about how legislation moves through Congress. If he backs down, it might show that there are still limits on presidential bullying. If Democrats cave completely, it teaches future presidents that hostage-taking works. Every possible resolution has major implications for how our government functions going forward. What we're witnessing is a stress test of American democracy. The founders designed a system with multiple veto points, and checks on power precisely to prevent any single person from dominating the government. Trump is testing whether those checks can actually hold against a president who's willing to cause unlimited damage to get his way. So far, the system is bending but not breaking. The question is how much more pressure it can take before something gives permanently. Keep your eyes on this one. Because what happens in the Senate over the next few weeks isn't just about immigration or government funding. It's about whether the institutions that are supposed to constrain presidential power can actually do their job. It's about whether hostage-taking becomes a normal feature of American politics. It's about what kind of country we're going to be. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the people making these decisions need to understand that history is watching. I'll see you in the next one. See you in the next